Unified School District Governing Board meeting June 9th, 2022. Unfortunately, President Alexander is not here today, so as Vice President, I'll be running this meeting. So we'll begin with a call to order and a roll call for quorum. Rosie?
So Maribel is absent. Freya?
Here.
Sophia?
Here.
Kimberly?
Here.
And Lisette? Here. Thank you.
Do we have anyone who would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? If not, I'll rise. Oh. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you all. Takes us to item 2, approval of agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Thank you, Kimberly. Thank you, Sophia.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Passes.
Passes 4-1.
Takes us to communications. Do we have any public comments, Rosie?
Not written, and we haven't received any slips, so no comments.
Anybody from the public here wants to say anything? Okay. Seeing no one, we'll move on to employee organization reports. Anybody here from CUTA? Everybody is gone for the summer. Okay, moving on. CSEA. Stig, is this the final one? Oh no, how sad. It's okay,
Yeah.
we'll still get you up here for technology stuff.
Good evening, Vice President McCormick and the board members, superintendent, administration, staff, and public. So, yeah, this is my last board meeting as the union president. I don't know how many board meetings I've been on, but through my 12 years has been a lot of them. I want to thank my members, those staff in the district who year after year have shown confidence in me as their leader and to be the voice between me, us, the employees, and the district. Also want to thank the district. I've been through, I think, Sean, you are the 5th superintendent I am under, and been both ups and downs. The last 2 years, I have the pleasure to work with Sean McPatrick, who is have a good understanding on staff's role in the school district. We also support the students, we support the teachers, the staff in the offices, and my final report, also that's been a pleasure to work with you board members. Freya, we have a long history together. I think we started about the same time. But there's been less and less for us to talk about through the years, which is a good thing. And I'm proud to have been there, had the support from my staff. And with that, I'm going to tell everyone I'm resigning officially as the president, and Diane Paoli, who has been a leader many years also in CSA, will be the next president. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Stig, for your years of service and your continued years of service coming up, but in that particular role. I'm sure that we'll have opportunity in the public comment to chat about that, but thank you again so much for everything. I see Kathleen here. We went over your place, but we'll go back to the CUTA because you weren't here before. Would you like to do a CUTA? Okay, come on up.
So I'm going to keep my comments short tonight because I need to duck out when I'm done. Hooray. Most of us survived the school year. Not all of us, sadly. It was extremely challenging. Kudos to our members who are teaching summer school. I applaud them. Number 2, as we go forth and we work on our salary and compensation negotiations for 2022-23, let's hope that we do not go to impasse in mediation like we have for the last 2 bargaining cycles. Number 3, and this is something that I think has been on all our minds, and I actually, by chance, heard Dr. McFetrich on KHMB radio this afternoon talking about this. Let's make our schools safer by fencing all of them. Fencing may not prevent a tragedy, but it will slow it down. I have in my calendar a memo that I received on May 11th, 2015. Rosie's son was in my class that year, and there was a viable threat made on Hatch School office at 1:20 on a Thursday afternoon, and we were put into a lockdown. And it was one of the scariest experiences of my life, because we didn't know what was happening. And thank goodness it was just a threat. It wasn't real. But I do remember opening that door after huddling down with 24 kindergartners in a corner of my classroom, the relief on the parents' face when they came to pick the kids up. And ever since then, I think most of my colleagues have been frightened that something like this could happen at our schools. And what I notice is the elementary schools are wide open. When we made the plans for Hatch to be remodeled, it was our understanding that there would be fencing around the schools. And that didn't happen. It's very disappointing. And I just feel like it's begging for the worst thing possible to happen. So let's make our schools safer by fencing all of them. We have talked as individuals to administration, and I know that as a CUTA Empower team, we've discussed with administration the possibility of fencing around the schools. And we were told it requires study. We need to do this. We need to do that. I do know that my mother lives behind Parkside Elementary School in San Mateo, Foster City. So I did a little research on this. On September 21st, 2012, an abduction occurred at Parkside Elementary School. A man walked into a girl's bathroom, grabbed a 9-year-old, covering her mouth with his hand and carrying her across the street. The girl broke free after kicking him and hurling rocks at him, police said. 5 days later, on September 26, 2012, new locked gates and security were installed at all the San Mateo Foster City schools, K through 8. We've talked about it, and I know that, not that I agree with Ted Cruz, but he did say, you need to make a barrier. You need to not allow people to be able to get into our schools. And when you go ahead and do this, which I know you will because it's the right thing to do, please consult with the people who work at the sites so they can show you vulnerable areas that need to be covered as well. So happy summer to everyone, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Kathleen. Appreciate it. And that takes us to board member reports. Do we have any particular? Jim, you want to go first?
Happy summer. I get to go to banjo camp. This coming week, it's a bluegrass and old-time music camp. So I'm really looking forward to the summer, and so have that sense of giddiness that I'm sure our students have. It's been a really challenging year, and I want to thank all of the teachers for their hard work and maintaining sanity in the classrooms. It's not perfect, but I think we're definitely on the road to recovery. Seeing the 5th grade graduation at El Granada, and how eloquent the student speakers were, and just how gracious both classrooms and all of the teachers' talks were. We've come a long way in this pandemic, and so I don't want to make light of that at all. It truly is a phenomenal job, and I know there's more recovery to happen, but let's relish some of the goodness that really has occurred. And just looking forward to moving into, well, certainly tonight's presentations, but looking forward to the fall and next year, hopefully having a more normal cadence and sense of business to be done that's a little more normal and not just pandemic related. I appreciate the efforts of all of the board members and the patience of the public as we have navigated and will continue to navigate pandemic items, but our students are why we are here, and I look forward to continuing to serve them in the fall.
Thank you. Thanks, Kim. Sophia?
Thank you. So as Kathleen referenced, the violence in Uvalde is on many of our minds. And it's really hard to forget in many ways. And in many ways, I think the problem is that it's too easy to forget because this has been a pattern that's been, since Columbine, since Sandy Hook, and there's no easy one-stop solution. And I think that there is, I also think of it in terms of the many forms of violence that happen in our schools. There are the very dramatic ones, and they're heart-wrenching when they happen like this, and they stick with the community forever. And I think that we ought to continue our safety protocols and continue to refine and continue. Sometimes it's not so easy because there are different perspectives within a community about what the best solutions are. So I appreciate staff taking the time to reach out to different stakeholders and get those different perspectives because there are different perspectives. I think that's really important. That's how the job gets done well. I think and I think it's clear we have an obvious need in our country as well as in our state for more common sense gun safety rules, and I think that's really important as well. But I think it's also not enough. I think we need to think about the bigger picture of violence in our schools and how it happens, not only, again, in such dramatic mass ways, but also on a day-to-day basis, whether it's a kid getting bullied in the bathroom or whether it's a kid being neglected because they are quiet or because they don't speak English. Many, 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 many different ways that our students are, and staff for that matter, can be subjected to that. So I think I'm excited to see a little bit more in our PD program today and in our LCAP about how we, can address various needs in our school district and in our schools as we move forward. I'm also really excited that we'll be doing an equity audit and a strategic planning process soon to really think big picture about not only, just everything operationally to curriculum to, everything in between. How do we do what we want to do in the best way that we can for students? So I'm really grateful for that process. And was really great to celebrate the end of the year with promotions at Hatch, Fairlawn View, as well as the graduations at Half Moon Bay High School and Pilarcitos. And I have to say, probably the award for the coolest thing goes to the Pilarcitos team for having a DJ at their graduation. I thought that was pretty awesome, and of course, amazing food. So thank you to everyone for wrapping up a really challenging year, but a year, challenges do bring opportunities if we look at them that way. And I know we've made such huge advances. I look at STIG for IT, for different things already there. There are too many to name right now, but I think we ought to look at those learnings and make sure we carry them forward. And I can't say enough how important it will be to welcome our students back in the fall, well, August 11th, I guess, not really fall, in the middle of summer, with the warmest welcome possible because they absorbed a lot over the last couple of years, as we know. And I hope that we can all, as the grown-ups, kind of take a break and take care of ourselves and recharge ourselves, but also really start thinking differently about what happens on August 11th when they walk in the door. I would challenge us to not necessarily go back to our old usual habits that we usually do every year, but to really think about what's it going to take for that every single kid to feel safe. And I don't mean just in terms of persons coming on campus and causing harm, but in terms of their feeling safe in the classroom with their peers and the grown-ups that we have here with them. So that's my call to action for everybody. Rest, recharge, but also think about how we can welcome our students back in the warmest possible way in August. So thank you.
Thanks, Sophia. Elizabeth, would you like to go?
I feel like I need to take this off, but no. Buenas tardes. Voy a empezar primero en español y nada más quiero darle las buenas tardes a todos los papás que posiblemente estén escuchando esto en español. Primeramente quiero darle también las felicidades a Steg y las gracias por todos los años que ha estado representando a los empleados del distrito y es un honor tener a una persona que es un inmigrante que ha tomado este papel de liderazgo. Para mí en lo personal es algo importante. Y también quiero darle las gracias por la forma en que él siempre se ha comunicado con mucho respeto, con mucha amabilidad y más que nada con muy buenas intenciones, que es lo que ocupamos en estos días. Segundamente quiero agradecer a todos los graduados. Muchas felicidades a todos los muchachos y ojalá que sigan adelante y el año que viene échenle más ganas porque cada año hay posibilidad de mejorar. Siempre hay que ir adelante y darle las gracias y las felicidades a los papás porque también son muy importantes en los logros y los triunfos de sus hijos. So, muchas gracias a los maestros por todo el trabajo que han hecho con estos muchachos. Gracias por toda la dedicación y todo lo que les han enseñado. Y finalmente también quiero hablar de las tragedias recientemente que están pasando en las escuelas, que en realidad es algo que es incomprensible, pero yo creo que más que esperar a las leyes que cambien para el control de todas las armas, también tenemos que tomar nuestro granito de arena y tratar de ayudar, ya sea como padres, involucrarnos más con nuestros hijos, saber más qué está pasando, ya sea como maestro, tratar de ver por qué están teniendo los problemas. Hay señales, esto no pasa de la noche a la mañana. A los consejeros y también a los miembros de la comunidad. Nosotros somos una comunidad pequeña y conocemos a estos muchachos en la comunidad y también tomar ese papel de responsabilidad por nuestra comunidad. So, los invito a todos que no nada más esperemos a que el gobierno haga algo, sino como individuales y como comunidad, nosotros también tomamos un papel para tratar de ayudar a estos muchachos que realmente necesitan mucha ayuda. Y con eso, es todo lo que les quería decir. So, ahora lo voy a decir en español. I just said thank you. No, I first want to start off and just say what an honor it is to meet you and know you, Stig. It's, as an immigrant, I think for me personally, it's just amazing to see people who step up and take leadership roles. So thank you for doing that. And not only did you take a leadership role, but you did it in a very kind, polite, and humanizing way, which is what we need more than ever now. So thank you for doing that, and thank you for your time. And I'm sure you will be missed because I think you really did what you had to do to represent the unclassified part of the employees. So thank you for doing that. And then I also want to say congratulations to all the graduates, all the young graduates, and I hope that next year is even a better year because there's always room for improvement. So congratulations to the students, congratulations to the parents who supported them and were nagging them like I nagged mine, and we just got to keep going forward. And thank you to the teachers. Thank you so much for all the work you do with these students. Thank you for the dedication. Thank you for everything you've taught them, from not only a board member, but as a parent. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Wall. And lastly, I also want to touch on the tragic, shootings, and I understand that laws need to be changed, and a lot of people are trying to get that, but it's not gonna happen overnight. And I think we each need to do our own part. And by what I mean by that is, as parents, we need to be more involved with our kids. And I'm saying this as a parent too. We need to be more involved. We need to know what's going on. We need to see the signs. There are signs. These kids don't wake up the next morning and do these kind of things. There's signs. The teachers, you guys sometimes spend more time with our kids than we do as parents. And, if there's something that just doesn't look like it's right, or things, there's signs, and counselors, and also as community members. Half Moon Bay is unique, and it's a small town, big hell, but it's a small town. It's a saying, and that's the nice thing about it. And I think as a community member, we grow around these kids either as neighbors or as friends of our children, so we just need to take. I invite all of us to just take that upon ourselves to try and see these signs and try and reach out and try and help these kids who are screaming for help in the wrong way. So, and I think that's it. And happy summer, everybody.
Thank you, Lizette. It's nice when you're running the meeting and everybody's already said everything. So, no, I'd like to also thank Stig, again, more formally for your years of service as union leadership. And I know that it's not always easy to kind of shoulder the issues that come up and try and get them resolved in as an efficient and respectful way as possible, but you've really done that through the years, and so I appreciate that. I appreciate you reaching out over the years and meeting and communicating, and I think I was talking to somebody in my family today just about communication. I feel like if people know information, if people communicate, all the different things that we think or can't happen or other kinds of stuff kind of get broken down as we all communicate. So I really appreciate how you've always reached out, Stig, and I wish you well in your new role, and I know you'll still be around. So I'm leaving too anyway, so 12 years. Mine's 11 and a half, but I'm almost there. I only knew 4 superintendents, though, so I was trying to figure out who the 5th one was for you. Anyways, and then congratulations to all the graduates. Such an amazing feat and such a great time of year, and happy summer to everyone. And thank you to all the staff that have supported all the students, and thank you to the teachers who've taught all the kids and taken care of them. And I know that it's been such a stressful year, and I really, truly hope that this summer is relaxing, except for those who are teaching summer school. Unless teaching summer school is relaxing for some people. I know some people love it like that. But the rest and relaxation, and just really, I know that it's been a really hard time, and I'm hoping that in the year to come it will be more, it'll be more, I don't know quite the word, it'll be kinder, and we'll be able to work together, and so in a way that will not be stressful. So I really hope for that in the next year. And yes, condolences to all of the folks in Uvalde and all the tragedy there, and we should definitely do what we can here. I think just a little call out that even though we do need nationally, and we probably even in the states some more, we are very lucky to be in a state that has very strict laws and that does do some of this flagging. There was an article after the event that talked about, at least in the city of San Jose, how many times they get calls and they intervene and they go check on people and the stuff that they don't do in some of these other states. So I do think that we are in a very lucky position, at least on that regard, that we don't even know the stuff that is actually, that is prevented, which is great. We shouldn't. But I also want to just acknowledge, Kathleen, the fear that I think teachers feel and I think students feel. I think this is the fear that our children have grown up with. And for me, reflecting on the 10 years from Sandy Hook to now, my daughter was 6 at the time of Sandy Hook, and I looked back at some of those moms that were appearing again who had lost their children, and the tragedy of that, but also how it's now kind of in our bones. That's what people think about. So I do think we have to do whatever we can to make us feel safe as well. So I think that that's an important part. Of course, that also includes all of the mental health and other types of stuff that we're always already doing. So I appreciate that. And then I wanted to say thank you to the Environmental Committee chaired by, that we were hoping we'd have a presentation, but I just want to acknowledge again the two chairs that are moving on to the next part of their, and I really appreciated working with them. Yeah, I think that is all the comments for me. Sean?
I have one last one before
yeah.
you go, Sean. Sure. I also, just really quick, I wanna say welcome to Jennifer Marsh. And I don't really get to see her that often, but I've seen her in the district office these last 4 years, and I know she's a native to Half Moon Bay, came to school here, so it's always very nice to see how she's able to come back and serve her community. So welcome and congratulations, Jennifer.
Okay. I'll try to keep back here. It has been a whirlwind, and happy summer to everyone, to the board, to the public. It has been bittersweet. Last week, I think it was last week, we were at a vigil with Ayudando Latinos a Soñar with Alas to show solidarity with the folks in Uvalde and also in Buffalo, and just too many shootings. And then there were graduations. And so I was able to attend Fairlawn View, El Granada, Cunha, the Half Moon Bay High School, Pilarcitos. Some of the graduations or promotion ceremonies I could not attend because I couldn't be at two places at once, but that was fantastic. And today was our first day of summer school. So I want to acknowledge that, things are coming to an end, but things are coming to a start. Speaking of coming to an end, I want to thank Stig Lin for all the work he's done these past 3 years, and particularly in the last 3 months, to get a contract, and his negotiations team, Diane Powley, Shane Medina, Kathy Gray. Did I miss anybody? That's it. And we have on the consent agenda tonight that contract for review, and I understand that it was voted unanimously by your members, Stig, and you've been a fantastic leader in that regard, so thank you. I just want to put a mark in that. I also want to speak to Ms. Wall's comments. Just today, the principal at Hatch, Alyssa Jaramillo, was asking about this. I had encouraged families that had reached out to me from Hatch and from El Granada to join their school site safety planning committees. We are looking at cameras in safety measures. We are looking at shoring up and fencing. I did task staff with looking at that, preliminary plans. There is work that will need to be done to include stakeholders and to get the Division of State Architects to plan gates, but we are looking into that currently. And we also know, as Lizette has spoken about, that we all have a role to play, whether it's classroom teachers, support staff, all of us, especially families, to let us know when there are warning signs, and it happens. So I look forward to working with community members, and Alyssa Jaramillo will be, she just called me today, say, what can we plan? And I hooked her up with Ronaldo Vesalisa, our construction manager, so we can start looking at preliminary plans there. And of course, that's part of the architectural plans for modernization at El Granada and Fairlawn View. And if you were to walk out here, you would see that there is new fencing installed here at Cunha. And there are some members of the community who said, well, wait a second, are we going to be able to get to the fields? Yes, you'll be able to get to fields. We have to be able to keep some of these community assets open after hours and on the weekends. But during the school day, we do need to have a place where we can shore up the perimeter and keep intruders out. I do want to mention also, congratulate the graduates and to the Environmental Committee. They did such fantastic work. Last year, they were proposing goals. By this year, we now have a sustainability dashboard. It was a goal that came from that Environmental Committee, from the students, their work with the San Mateo County Office of Education. Andrea Goyen, Naomi Stern, those folks have been great support to us with the waste diversion pilot at Half Moon Bay High School, which we're hoping to do at all our schools, with water barrels, and with the sustainability dashboard. And I want to thank Matthew Spiegelman from the HEAL Project, Amy Bono from the HEAL Project. Those folks have been fantastic partners also to help us with water conservation. And Ronaldo Vesalisa is also talking about doing some water catchment for some runoff at the high school. We were touring that spot today because we understand that the water can roll down that hill onto the high school fields. So I am looking forward to the Environmental Committee continuing with Dr. Bhatia to talk about how we can move that into curriculum and instruction areas and to align it with science curricula and other course areas. I'm also looking forward to, as Sophia mentioned, the equity audit and strategic plan. That's also on the consent agenda. I do want to speak about some other things on the consent agenda. We have a career technical education grant. We have an agricultural education incentive grant. Lisa Longacre has done fantastic work this year, and we are looking at new career technical education opportunities. Indeed, I was talking to Tracy Yerby from the high school about this, about whether or not we could do an allied health pathways or bioscience, biotech, that kind of thing. And Lisa and she have talked about that, and I want to thank them for that. The SIPSs, the Student Plan for Student Achievement, the Single Plans for Student Achievement are on the consent agenda. There is also the adoption of the ELA, English Language Arts and English Language Development Curriculum for elementary schools. And I want to thank Dr. Bhatia for leading 15, 16 people in that process this year to pilot. And they got a recommendation from teachers. I think it was 15 out of 16 decided to go with, I want to say it's Benchmark, is that right? Thank you, Benchmark Adelante. And so that we will finally have a unified curriculum for ELA, English Language Arts, English Language Development in the school. And I think that is one of the most important things that we can do. And I look forward to professional development on that, Leticia. Dr. Bhatia, excuse me. We also have curriculum for AP Environmental Science, AP US History, Marine Ecology. So we have some new curriculum coming. I'm very grateful to Dr. Bhatia and for teacher leaders for helping with that. We also have the approval of an MOU with Hazel Health. We've seen a good amount of families using Hazel Health, and that has helped keep kids in school or determine if kids can stay in school or if they need medication. And you'll see all the personnel reports, but I am happy, again, to say to Stig, congratulations on your next step. You've been a fantastic interim director of technology, and at the next board meeting, we will be bringing a recommendation to have Stig become our director of technology in the district, but I'm sort of jumping ahead to next 2 weeks from now, giving you a peek at that. And speaking of personnel, I again am delighted that Erin O'Connor Brown has decided to take over as principal of El Granada Elementary School. Claire Beltrami has been fantastic these last 2 years, but she has grandchildren. She's looking forward to retirement. Erin O'Connor Brown has served admirably as a teacher and as a part-time dean here at Cunha. Speaking of Cunha, Jeff Clinton, teacher here at Cunha, will be the next principal of Cunha Intermediate School. And we also are happy to talk about one of our own, Andy Boysen, assistant principal at Half Moon Bay High School, will be the next principal of Half Moon Bay High School. I think that covers what I can cover today about those new hires. We're very excited. Bianca Forrester has been doing a great job as our new director of pupil personnel services in recruiting and hiring, and we have a lot more to announce in the beginning of the year for sure. I did say that we have a new contract that is also on the consent agenda with CSEA. And then I think that is really, I think I've covered what's on the consent agenda, but I always want to lift that up for the public to know. So if you're looking at that, all those materials are online if you want to look at that. And with that, I look forward to the presentations for the rest of the evening. Thank you. Congratulations to our graduates. Congratulations to our staff for making it through this time. And many thanks to our staff who are leading summer school starting today. And we look forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks.
Thanks, Sean. Okay, that takes us on to item 4, the consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
A second? Okay, all in favor? Aye. Is it a roll call?
No, I just want to say something.
Okay.
When we post the agenda, we couldn't post the CSEA, CUSD agreement.
Okay.
So we have to make it public at the same time. So I'm just sharing with you copies,
Okay.
and we have more copies in the back. So, and we couldn't post it because it just passed yesterday.
And that is typical, just so the public knows, it is often the case that we will put a placeholder. Of course, the board sort of gets updates from the superintendent on what we're negotiating. We think this is a very good thing. This resolves some issues that were prime for the agenda for Stig and his crew with the CSEA, and then also from the district, and helps us take care of, in particular, a mechanism by which to take care of accrued vacation liability, which in this district has been a large expense. And I really want to thank Stig and his partners for thinking through that in an innovative way to help us take care of employees who have, some of them literally 1,000 hours of vacation accrual, which needs to get paid out. And I appreciate CSEA doing that in a way that is financially sustainable and reasonable for us, but also doesn't make it so that they get paid so much that they take a huge tax hit. So that was an alignment of interest. I just want to thank you for that. And otherwise, the contract, I would highly recommend you approve it because I know it's good for CSEA, they approve it, and I think it's good for us too.
Shall we vote now? All right. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 4-1, President Alexander is absent.
Okay, takes us to general business. Item 5A, are we still going to do it even though the students aren't here? Yes? Okay. Student recognition.
It was fantastic to see these students speak at Half Moon Bay High School last Thursday night, but it is summertime and I believe they're on vacation. So quickly, every year we recognize the salutatorian and valedictorian at Half Moon Bay High School. And tonight, we recognize Natalie Inglis and Josie Miller. And I won't be reading these whole blurbs, but they were the co-salutatorians and shared in those speaking duties, very moving on Thursday night. And also the valedictorian, Hannah Pike. I think I got that name correct. Did I? Okay, good. And she also had a very moving speech to start off graduation. So we want to recognize Half Moon Bay High School co-salutatorians, Natalie Inglis, Josie Miller, and valedictorian Hannah Pike. And this is not an action item, it is simply a recognition. There is no action required by the board.
Any comments? Yes, congratulations to all of them. And I hope they're having fun on their trip.
I told Mr. Nazar, since they weren't going to be here, we didn't expect him to be here. And of course, he's still working with us till June 30th, but I hopefully he's getting some summer in because this might be one of the few summers that he is able to fully relax after being in school since he was 5 years old. We joke about how many years we've heard school bells. And so we also, I just want to thank, it was just an overflowing abundance of love for Mr. Nazar from students last week. And so we congratulate him as well.
Great, thank you. So item 5B, the 2021-24 Local Control Accountability Plan, 2022 supplement to the annual update.
Dr. Bhatia will be presenting on this, and I want to thank Jennifer Marsh for working with her through this, with Mr. Contreras being out for personal reasons. I know Jennifer has been a great support also to Dr. Bhatia, and Dr. Bhatia, bless you, because I don't know how many pages of this 1,000-page document this is, but it's huge. It's really big.
It is really big. It is. So give me just 1 second.
And just to clarify for the board, this is a discussion item, and it'll be coming back to us for approval in the end of June.
So I did have, there is a public hearing. I'm not quite sure if it happens after or before I present.
After you present.
Oh, got it. Okay, thank you. So good evening, governing board members, colleagues, and community members. I'm here today, yes, with a very large packet, but I feel it's one of our biggest. It is our strategic plan. It is where we do provide the public and our community an overview of where our majority of our funds are spent, particularly our LCFF concentration. I did want to point out before I start the presentation that in the board packet, we do have lots of other LCAP documents that we're not going to go into detail in the presentation, but if the community and the public would like to dig a little deeper during the summer months, feel free to do that, or between now and the final LCAP approval. In the package, you are going to find, of course, a copy of the draft LCAP. I did also want to point out that just this week, we did meet with our San Mateo County of Education friends and partners, And they have already provided lots of input around improvement on budget and clarifications as well as program. So we are going to bring those changes between now and the 23rd of June. In the agenda, you also will find the LCAP plan, the LCAP presentation. You also will have the supplement to the update for the LCAP 21-22. This was something that we did bring to you for presentation about 6 months ago, but part of the LCAP process, we do need to bring it and approve it again. There were no changes in that piece, but we're just putting it as part of the packet as well. We also have our LCAP federal addendum. This is where we explain how we utilize our categorical funds, Title I through Title IV. We have our draft LCFF budget overview for parents, and then later on, we'll engage in the public hearing. Give me 1 second. Oh, the clicker, yes. Thank you. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my bearings here with my presentation. Okay, here we go. I always have an interesting relationship with this clicker. But okay. Oh, yeah? Thank you. Thank you, because I don't think it's working. I don't think it's working here. Okay, so here's the agenda, and basically we're going to quickly go through the goals and highlight a few actions and services, and then provide a very high-level financial overview. I know that our amazing Jennifer Marsh is going to go into a little more detail later. I do want to say that this year, I want to give a big shout out to our Josefina Infanzon, Holly Lynn, Jennifer Marsh. Also, we had 2 principals this year who helped us with the creation of the LCAP and the addition of particularly the family engagement piece. Also, all of our departments, it definitely took a village, our various departments and all of our educational partners that provided input when we did hold our LCAP meetings. We asked for input not only through Zoom and live meetings, but also through some surveys. So you're going to see all of that input reflected in this presentation. Okay, then the next slide. Okay, so here is our star and our different rays where the LCAP is really centered on. And this is our cradle to career visual. And as you can see in the middle, you have the star where we want all our students' needs to be met. The corners of the star, we want to make sure our students are safe, that they're engaged. We want to ensure that they're supported. And I know, Sophia, you were mentioning the importance of making sure that we start the year with building those social emotional supports before we start right into the academics. We also want to continue to challenge them and support their health. And you're going to see the 10 different LCFF priorities on the left. And those that would like a little more information on those, these are hyperlinks, so you can click on that. But all of the priorities are basically grouped in 3 different areas. You're going to see student outcomes, and these are all of the metrics that the state provides. On the right, and the green is the engagement. Looking at school climate, student engagement, and parent involvement. You're going to see some attendance data in the LCAP, and these are some of the metrics that we use to measure that. And in the blue area, of course, conditions of learning. Looking at course access, foster youth, making sure that we, like today, we're updating and adopting curriculum that is aligned to the Common Core state standards. And basic service, which would be our facilities. I know we also talked about making sure that the facilities are built in order to provide a safe and effective learning environment for our students. And then the next one, Rosie. So this, and you might need to click this slide about 4 or 5 times, if that's okay, there we go. So here you're going to see these indicators in a different format. The indicators to the left are local indicators. On June 23rd, We'll be back, I'll be back presenting more details on our local indicators. This is a self-assessment that we do. We look at our local metrics and self-evaluate, and we'll present. So we'll bring that to you on the 23rd. But on the right side, you're going to see the 6 state indicators. And this is the California dashboard. And as you recall, and you'll see in a little bit, these are the rainbow colors from red to blue. And our goal is to get as many indicators in the blue area because that is the top performing level. Some of the state indicators include academics, English learner progress, the LPAC, graduation rate, chronic absenteeism, suspension, and college and career indicators. Particularly our CTE pathways, that's one of the major indicators for college and career as well. Okay, and then the next slide, Rosie. This slide here will then give you a vision of, we can succinctly summarize all of the LCAP documents and our goals. Our goals can be placed into these 3 different themes or pillars. Our goals, our actions and services were built to ensure that our students are successful both in social and academic success. In the middle, you're going to see equity, and we did talk about, I know Dr. McFetridge is leading the equity audit. All of our plans, our LCAP, our single plans for student achievement, our professional development plan as we move forward to next year are going to have that thread of equity and making sure that all of the needs of our students are met, particularly the needs of students that need those extra layers of support. And to the right, you're going to see engagement. And it's always important to know that we don't only look at engagement, definitely priority is looking at engagement for our students, but also the engagement of our staff, making sure that they receive professional development opportunities that can give them the tools to support students in the classroom. And the next slide. So here you are going to see LCAP again is a 3-year plan. We're right in the middle of it, 2022, 2023. It was very new to us last year. Here, you're just going to see the 3 types of goals. This was new last year, but we'll continue. The state is recommending that we try to include at least one of each of these goals, the focus goal, the broad goal, and the maintenance of progress goal. Some of the focus goals are 1 year. I'll give you an example. Last year, we did have a goal of making sure we have standardized ELA, ELD curriculum in elementary. We met that goal. So now we've added a new goal to replace that. It was a 1-year goal. But we also have some goals in our LCAP that are 3-year goals or more broad goals. And a broad goal making it's less concentrated, but it continues to support a growth and an improvement in growth. We also have some maintenance of progress goals, and these are goals that you'll see that we are doing very well, but we want to maintain that, let's say, 100% participation in some of our committees. Okay, in the next slide, Rosie. So the goals will be presented. So these next few goals are considered broad goals. These are some of our 3-year goals. This next slide, Rosie. This goal has not changed. It will continue to maintain as a goal around student achievement, academic and social, emotional success. As you remember, the star and the rays, we can see here the LCAP or LCFF priorities 1, 2, 7, and 8. That's how the alignment is for this particular goal. The next slide, Rosie. And so here you are going to see the specifics on the actions and services. And I do just want to point out a couple. The first one is highly qualified staff, and I want you to know that probably 65 to 70% of our funding is LCFF base is concentrated on basically staff salary, classified, certificate, and unrepresented. Another important goal here that is not LCFF supplementals, LCFF basis special education services. Special education services are about approximately $7 million. That's also a lot of money that we set aside to ensure we meet the needs of our students with special needs. And as you can see, STEAM, science, career tech ed, credit recovery, and early college access continue to be actions and services that we'll focus on, as well as that professional development to ensure that our teachers are fit with those tools, whether it's with training around new curriculum and new adoptions, but also training on social, emotional, and class climate. I know that Martha Ladd and the team and our Bianca Forrester are working on making sure that we set up our schools in order to meet the SEL support, the social emotional needs of our students. Okay, and the next slide, Rosie. So in this slide, keep in mind, and I tried to explain that a little bit in the board memo, where last year we did have the option to give the CASP test, but because we just returned in April and our kids were just here for some even just 4 weeks in high school, our staff and our administrators felt it just would not be appropriate, and it would not support that social, emotional, and warm welcome to our students to administer the CASP. And so our team decided not to administer the CASP, and instead we continued with our local assessments in math and in ELA. And as you can see here, we do have some things to celebrate. When you see the first column under all student, and you look at it's a reddish color or pink color, there we do have, when you're comparing all students from last year to this year, we did have a negative growth, but it's important to point out that when our students did come back, we are taking the test that was administered in February, so we were still in remote learning, and not many students actually participated in the online assessment. And this is similar to CASP. It's the same situation occurred across the state of California, where many schools that decided to administer CASP and asked kids to come back a little earlier. It was a very small subgroup of students and not represented of all of the demographics. So unfortunately, we're not really comparing apples to apples, but same thing happened with our local data, but I wanted to point that out. But the good news is that when we're looking at the subgroup data, there were some definitely increases when we're comparing subgroup, and let me just take the first one, the special education column, which is right in the middle. We're comparing the growth from students that qualified under that demographic of special education in the fall, in February of last year, which was a small subgroup. So then when we came back in person, we had a bigger subgroup, but they did overall demonstrate growth, as well as our white subgroup, our Hispanic Latino, and English learners were about 50-50. So we definitely want to celebrate the blue pieces because that was positive growth when we're comparing subgroup to their own subgroup.
I'm sorry, Leticia, can I ask a clarifying question? I'm not understanding, what are these numbers? Are these students, numbers of students?
These are percentages, I'm sorry. So
Okay.
this is percent proficient.
And what are the rows then under ELA? Like, what's the first row versus the
We
second
didn't
row?
put it, sorry.
No, that's okay.
I think that's third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, and 11th.
These are percentage of students in the different grades that receive the CASP testing?
Yes.
Results this year, 2022, compared to results 2020? The last year they took the test?
2021.
But they
Yes.
didn't take the test in 2021, right?
This is not CASP, this is local data, and they did take
okay.
it.
Okay, this is the local data for whatever they used for that grade last year and this year for local data? Because it's
Yes.
probably different by the grades.
It was
and-
Lexia across the board, so yes.
okay, it was
It's
Lexia, okay.
It's third through eighth, and the last one is 11th, and the same thing in math. I
Okay,
apologize
Delta-
for missing that column, that very
Yeah,
important
yeah.
column.
Okay, thank
And-
you.
And yes,
Delta math.
it's local data.
Okay.
Are they within cohort, or is it third grade this year and against third grade last
It's
year?
third against third. It's not within cohort. And that's the work that we are leading our principals to do, because that's really the important work when we're looking at data analysis and the improvement science. In our professional development, we did train our leaders and our teachers in looking at not only state and local benchmarks, but really looking at the assessments that are occurring weekly, the formative assessments in the class, because that's where the biggest change can occur. And yes, so that work, we definitely are working towards next year, working with our principals and our teachers to really dig into into their classroom data and look at their cohort, look at that particular student growth. And again, we can probably provide pages and pages of data, but this is just kind of like a big overview and definitely success, because if we look at cohort data, I'm sure that we will, especially with the white and Hispanic Latino, we definitely might see growth. And then the other thing is around AVID. COVID-19 really affected our AVID program, not only on enrollment, but also the applications to 2 to 4 year colleges. This is the COVID year. So when we compared it during the COVID year, where we came back around April, compared it to this year's AVID students, we did get 100% of AVID students applied to 2 or 4 year colleges. So definitely an area to celebrate there as well. Thank you, Rosie. And this goal, again, when we look at equity, we know that we provide a base program to all students, but we have other cohorts of students that might need additional supports on top of that. And so all of the actions and services under this goal, we try to be very specific and intentional on supporting our English learners, special education students, students with special needs, Hispanic, Latinx students, and socioeconomically disadvantaged students. This goal here is aligned to LCFF Priority 4, Pupil Achievement, and 5, Pupil Engagement. Next slide. And here you're going to see an overview of the actions and services. And so, although we did go ahead and adopt an ELA-ELD adoption in elementary, our goal is to now focus in secondary ELA-ELD. And we want to continue we are an MTSS district, an MTSS when we're looking at mainly positive behavior intervention systems in the classroom, and taking a look at that data that provides that social emotional growth, attendance, suspension rates, counseling sessions, and our goal is to continue to provide supports through this MTSS model to ensure that, as Martha always calls it, it's Maslow's before Bloom's. So we want to make sure that the basic skills are given to that we support our students to making sure that they have those basic needs and they feel loved and they feel cared for before we start making these requests for the academics, because if a child's social emotional needs are not met, it's going to be very difficult for that student to achieve academically. So we are, as you're going to see throughout our actions and services, that SEL supports MTSS is embedded throughout all of our actions and services. Here we also are looking at expanded supports and programs in transitional kinder. We are utilizing some of our ELO, Expanded Learning Opportunity Program funds, to really start the interventions early on, to ensure we close that achievement gap early. And we are actually getting ready to send a survey to TK families to see if they're interested in having our TK students come to school, but then also expand their day up until 5 p.m. And so that funding will support us with giving those students those opportunities where their social emotional needs can also be met, and we can continue to support them in being the best student they can be. And again, big lift is there. That's all about early childhood education, making sure that we prepare students to be readers by 3rd grade. Our ELD intervention and curriculum, we are very lucky to have hired, it is about 3.5 staff members to support an ELD intervention. They already have shown great successes this year, including an asynchronous summer program. And we're going to ensure that we build those safety nets for our ELs to make sure they have those language tools to be successful. And our goal is to, and right now, currently, we will be having an ELD teacher on special assignment. It's going to be different percentages, but one full-time at El Granada, one full-time at Hatch Elementary School, about a 0.6 at Cunha, and a 0.4 at Half Moon Bay High School. And we're super excited to begin next year. I know this year we tried, but because of the severe sub shortage, they were pulled to do subbing and other things. So our plan was not really implemented as the way that we designed it. And next slide, Rosie. And here you are going to see an overview, they're very small, but overview of our metrics. But we did have some successes when we were looking at the SAT. The percent of students taking the SAT, again, last year, 2021, was 31%. This year was 39%, that's an 8% increase. We do have a slight increase in the overall CUSD students meeting graduation requirement, 1%. White subgroup, it's about 1%. Our Hispanic Latino subgroup maintained, maybe increased 0.10%, but not too significant, at least we maintained. It's also important to know that for the UC CSU requirement data, we need a little more time to look at that because there was, in the transition of staff, our technology staff over about a year ago, there was data that was not uploaded to CalPADS. So in CalPADS and in this California dashboard, you're going to see a vacancy there. But in the summer, we are working with our new principal, Mr. Boysen, to take a look at this UC CSU data and see if we can compare the growth. And then we did have a slight dip on students scoring 4 or more in the AP exam. Significant dip, but this is something that, again, as we move on next year, this data can help us develop interventions to support and increase the AP level 4s for our students. And again, the important piece is having those conversations and digging and peeling the layers of the onion, making sure that we take this data and start looking at the subgroup data in regards to AP. And then we do have our LPAC data. We had a slight dip, about a 3% decline in the LPAC level 4s. But I do have to say that 13.51% compared to overall California, we did better when we're comparing to how California ELs performed after this COVID year. So for me, I know that I'm celebrating that because we still as a district outperformed the overall EL LPAC levels 4 in California. Okay, and then next slide. And we have maintenance of progress goals. Maintenance of progress, most of these actions and services have been successful and we want to maintain. That's hence the maintenance of progress. We want to keep it as a 3-year goal. And this is around student and parent engagement. We're good, but we are always looking at improving. Next slide, Rosie. And so this is where you're going to see academic and also social emotional supports for students and for parents. Next slide. And here are some of the actions and services. I mean, today was our opening day for summer school, and it was pretty amazing to go and visit and see our kids engage and our staff. And again, very grateful to all of our staff who are here and who are helping our At Promise students, because I know that they did have a choice and they decided to support us, and they're doing an amazing job. Interventions in tutoring, we want to continue to explore how that can work here at Cabrillo next year. How can we support our students K through 12, particularly our middle and high school students? It's very easy, and our elementary students, if we invite students to come to an after-school intervention, we almost always get 100% participation, but in middle and high school, it's a challenge. So we'll continue to work and investigate how those models can work in our middle and high school. We want to continue and grow our community and parent engagement committees, and also continue to grow and to learn from the family and student case management system. And we are trying to replicate the migrant-to-migrant student case management system and teach those case management skills to the ELD, our ELD teachers on special assignments, so that we can make sure we're tracking not only the improvement of our EL students, but also students that have been reclassified. And then next slide. Here you are going to see the overview metrics of our parent engagement. And we did have a slight decrease of the parent participation in the Panorama survey, so we hope to increase that number for next year. Our student enrollment, it's not final yet, but our goal is to serve about 670 students, but we'll come back to you at the end of summer. I know that we are still making phone calls this week to our parents and families, letting them know that, that we do have a program available. Then here you're also going to see our community meetings. We want to continue with our community meetings and improve and increase attendance. And we already talked about our family and student case management system. Next slide, Rosie. We have our focus goal. And so the next goals in this section are focus goals, which could be 1, 2, or 3-year goals. Next slide, Rosie. Thank you. Next slide. Okay, here we are. And so here you are going to see, this is our social emotional goal, and here are some specific actions and services that we'll continue to implement. We talked about MTSS, and again, you're going to see MTSS and PBIS embedded in this final goal. Counseling supports, family engagement supports. We are continuing to look at translation service and improvement of school facilities. The next slide, Rosie. And here were some of the metrics that we compared from last year to this year. And overall, we did see growth in all of the metrics shown on this slide. Next slide. And then we have, and so here is our differentiated assistance goal. About 2 years pre-COVID, Cabrillo, along with other districts, but Cabrillo was deemed as not over-identifying and having an underperformance of these 3 subgroups: Hispanic, Latino, English learners, socioeconomically disadvantaged, in the 3 areas. So we were underperformance of these subgroups in ELA, ELD, underperformance in the subgroups in math, and an over-suspension of these subgroups. And so this definitely, it's a legal requirement. We will continue to keep this goal and dig deeper and support our new principal at Cunha. Cunha was a school that was identified under differentiated assistance. So this goal specifically is for Cunha, but if we do have professional development opportunities, and we do try to standardize it across the district, but the actions and services will mainly focus on here on Cunha and improving the SEL and decreasing the suspensions in these particular subgroups. Next slide, Rosie. And so again, you're going to see our MTSS here. You're going to see an increase in reading interventions teachers, an increase in during school and after school enrichment service. In this goal, we do allocate some funding for the dean. I know this year we are allocating 100% dean. So we're really, Victor is his name, that we hired. And so we're really excited about that. And so again, this, you will see positions as well as services to support this particular goal here for our differentiated assistance status. Next slide, Rosie. And then the metrics. And here we are. I'm not going to go over the ELA piece, but this ELA data, kinder, so first row is kinder all the way through 8th, and then the last row is 11th. Here you're also, we're also going to continue to look at the LPAC, but also important to know is the increase in VAPA in STEAM services. We do know that when we're looking at SEL, the visual arts and the performing arts support the social emotional needs of our students. And so this year we are increasing the number of sections in visual arts and performing arts here at Cunha particularly. We'll continue with our VAPA committee next year to increase services across the board, kinder through 12, and making sure that we define pathways to support SEL with within VAPA and embed VAPA not only through specific VAPA courses, but also in all different content areas. One example is this year we continue to partner with ALAS, and so they are giving 2 hours of VAPA services throughout our summer programs. And so they'll be jumping around to the different STEAM classes, and I know that our students are super excited, and they were dancing and singing. So if you have a chance, let us know. We can definitely give you a tour of a summer program, particularly the VAPA services. And the next slide, Rosie, the fiscal overview. Okay, so I'm going to try to see how much I've learned from our Jesus Contreras and Jennifer Marsh here. So we have, here's the funding, and so we are, there are 2 types of districts. We have under LCFF districts, we have property taxes, and so there are some districts whose property taxes are not enough to meet what the state deems as an appropriate funding per student. And so then the state comes in with LCFF concentration funds, basically, and so they try to fill the bucket. Then we have actually 15% of districts in California are basic aid, and we're one of them. And I know that we might flip-flop at some point, but right now we are a basic aid district. And again, we're among the minority, 15%. And so that means that our property taxes are really high, and they are above and beyond what the state deems as appropriate funding per student. And so we keep that extra funding. And so our average daily attendance, although it's super important for us to monitor because that is an indicator of the academic and social success of students, it doesn't pertain to any funding. So it doesn't correlate to funding. So it's, on the funding piece, it's not important. On the student piece, super important. And yeah, so that's a basic aid. We're a basic aid district. So in basic aid districts, and LCFF district, basically the way I see it, we have 3 funding sources. We have 3 LCFF. So every district receives LCFF. We have LCFF base, and that's the majority of the funding that everybody gets. Then we have LCFF supplemental, and although we don't get the supplemental, the state tells us this is your percentage of your base funding that you have to set aside to serve those particular 3 subgroups of at-promise students: socioeconomically disadvantaged, foster youth, and English learners. Yes, and English learners. Thank you. And then you have the 3rd type of LCF funding with this LCFF concentration. Basic aid districts do not get LCFF concentration, and that really is the difference. We just get LCFF base, and that certain percentage we save, and it typically is, about $2.6 million a year. And those are the funding sources where in the LCAP budget, you're going to see the LCFF contributing. There are 2 tables that you can see in our LCAP, non-contributing, contributing. So the contributing table is our LCFF percentage of supplemental. I hope I explained that a little bit. The next slide. And here you are going to see our allotment. And as you can see, although we do have a decreasing enrollment, and so if we were an LCFF district, it would definitely affect the funding at the bottom. So we still don't know our 22-23 enrollment, but the funding that's allocated to us is based on the enrollment of this past year. And we actually have increased from 2020-2021 from 2,339 to 2,300,000 approximately. And I know that this number could still change. It actually just changed about 2 weeks ago, right, Jennifer? But this is the amount that we're working on our LCAP, the 2.399344 million for LCFF supplemental. Next slide, Rosie. And then this is just the appendix. So if you want to dig deeper on LCFF and LCAP, you can feel free to click on those hyperlinks. And then do you have any questions?
First, thank you very much for the thorough presentation, and I realize there's just, all of the plans are comprehensive, and there's a lot of detail. And thank you for including the hard work that you have done to bring the VAPA, to bring that forward as part of the plan, because those life experiences are foundational for kids to learn.
And I'm sorry to interrupt, I just want to point of order question. Do we want to do the public hearing now before the comments from the board and discussion?
What do you think,
Just, I think
Rosie?
I know usually Mary Beth was having any public comments or any hearing stuff happen before, so that we can incorporate into the discussion any public comments.
The rationale for that would be, of course, that if you heard something from the public, then the board could comment on that. I will leave that up to our vice president who's leading the meeting.
Okay, either way, I kind of doubt we have any public comments, so it's a little bit academic. Do you mind waiting a minute? Sure. Okay.
Clearly not likely, but.
Opening the public, I love to have the gavel. This is like my last time to have the gavel, probably. Opening the public hearing. Is there anybody who would like to make a comment on the proposed LCAP? Thank you, Leticia. Seeing none, I'm closing the public hearing. Thank you. Okay, go ahead, Kim.
Thank you. I realize that the LCAP addresses our at-promise students, and we talk about it as being our plan for the entire district. One of the things we haven't talked about in the last few years, and I don't notice it here, but I do recognize even at-promise students can classify as gifted and talented. We're not a state that mandates services for gifted and talented, but our district has at times offered special programming at the elementary schools. Has that been part of any conversation?
It has not since my tenure here. So no, it has not.
Okay. I would just inject it as a point of curiosity, because you can have students that can be your best troublemakers in school, frustrated because they're not challenged. And they can be the same students frustrated that aren't performing well on your standardized testings or may not be reading. So I just offer that as a point of curiosity and something we might watch for specifically with our at-promise students.
Definitely. I know we definitely, when in all trainings, we do teach differentiation of instruction, and with all subgroups, and making sure that we teach to the standards, but also support students throughout the spectrum of learning. The students that have already achieved the standard, we encourage and provide trainings and strategies to support our teachers in making sure that within the classroom it's embedded. But thank you. I will take that point as we move forward and continue to look at serving the needs of all students.
No, thank you, Leticia. I think that makes sense too, in terms of kind of a shift from this idea that certain kids are special and more talented and born that way, to this idea that every child has a potential to shine, right? And so that's where this model of differentiated instruction comes in. And I appreciate that that has been an area of focus, to try to make sure that kids are neither falling behind nor bored to tears sitting in the class, not because they're dumb or smart, but because they're just, that's where they are at that class and that point in time. So I really appreciate that. I also wanted to mention too, in terms of kind of, you highlighted a lot of the progress in the visual performing arts. Also, I think that bit around STEAM is really important, and I'm glad that you have that in the plan too. And I just want to comment on how much I know, like, I just give a shout out, for example, to the Cunha team for their bike mechanics class, which is probably hands down the class I hear the most about from families, as far as like what kids like and what's cool. And it's like, it's just, you know, a teacher was passionate about this subject, popped the idea, he's teaching it, the kids love it, it's like practical, it's real. So I think that kind of like hands-on, real-life experience, and we're seeing a lot more of that at Half Moon Bay High School too, with the real-life learning program, where it's really more thoughtful ways to engage kids in like real-life, meaningful things that aren't just academic, nice to know, interesting kind of conceptually, which is cool and interesting and important, but also really like, okay, this is how the world works. So I just want to put a shout out to the Cunha team for that aspect and how they've really shown in terms of the STEAM work that they're doing, at least with, with that specific class too.
And I do want to say, though, so yes, so thank you for pointing that out. Yes, we do have STEAM embedded, the science, technology, engineering, and math. And our goal, starting from the high school and even middle school, and feeding into the elementary, is growing a computer programming pathway. They do have, so we're looking at increasing those science and technology courses, the robotics courses at the high school. And I know Mr. Boysen, that is one of his priorities that we have discussed in building those STEAM pathways for our students through the Wheel at Cunha and feeding into the high school. Because after all, we are in Silicon Valley. I mean, we're on the coast, but we're still, I think, considered Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, and to the extent that those activities can be integrated, I think is really spectacular. Like, I think that's where something like a hands-on mechanics thing, because it does integrate math, it does integrate engineering, it does integrate physical fitness. I mean, like he talks about just the activity of bike riding, that's a big part of it as well. So to the extent that all these wonderful pieces can be integrated, I think that's where we have opportunities throughout all our curriculum to, I think I had commented at a previous meeting about and I don't remember if it was, we were chatting offline, or maybe I was speaking with Sean about, I noticed the Cunha Social Studies curriculum is actually I was speaking with the teacher at Hatch. It was I was observing the Social Studies curriculum at Cunha is actually really great because, many reasons, but one of the reasons is within that curriculum, it embeds the concepts of technology, of math, and speaks, for example, and art, straight in that curriculum. So their chapter on Islam, for example, in the history of Islam during the Middle Ages, was speaking about the calligraphy and had the kids do exercises drawing these, characters that they've seen before but not really familiar with. It's just as an artistic expression, as well as speaking about the importance, how compasses were developed in that time and explaining a little bit about how compasses work. So I think it's where we can connect these dots for kids. It creates for a more meaningful learning experience. So, sorry, a little side tangent, but speaking of the STEAM stuff, just bringing everything together is great.
Lizette, do you have any comments that you'd like to make for the discussion?
I mean, thank you for all your hard work, and seriously, thank you so much. And the fact that there's a curriculum, at least for the elementaries abroad, is great to hear, and it's very important, especially with families constantly having to, move because sometimes it's, people are struggling to afford where to live. So I think it's important that no matter what school they attend, they're all given the same opportunity and are at the same level, at the same page. And I think that's even more powerful. I mean, I might be ignorant saying this because I'm not a teacher, but I think it also will help with the teachers and the collaboration and all of that, which I think is important because sometimes when it's almost like every school is a little different little world of its own, and we are a district. We should be unified. So thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it. I do have like Kim says, a curiosity question about school, summer school. How is the attendance? Is it?
I have not checked, but I know that high school, again, elementary I think is fine. I checked in and I said, how did the students show up? And they did. I think in high school, we probably, if I can guesstimate, I was teaching actually one class this morning, but maybe we had 15% less attendance.
Okay.
But we did start on a Thursday, so I know that the teams were calling the families and making sure. And so they did confirm with a few families for tomorrow. But I can get that information to you. I can ask.
I guess I was just curious because it's always hard to see lost opportunities, and so I just wanted to make sure that I was just curious, and the fact that the staff is reaching out to the students who might have missed it or didn't have the right information. I think that's awesome. And not only does it help them, connect them to the services, but it creates, parent engagement. Just, I think, as a Latina and knowing that we're very relationship-based, it's when the school worries about your child and reaches out to you in a way that, in that kind of way is very, it's a really good step forward to, getting more parent involvement. No, that was it. Thank you for everything. Thank you.
And, do you go ahead?
Oh, I just want to make one more comment and to thank you and your team that worked on this document. I appreciate our colleagues at the state level, but they've created a very complex bureaucratic format for you to follow with all these documents and all these broad goals. And it's too complicated, quite honestly, and I wish you didn't have to put all your great thoughts into it, but it's clear from your presentation that you have really clear focus and areas of priority that you're working on in terms of fully implementing MTSS, focusing on staffing and training and development, targeting student supports appropriately, and doing all of that based on data. And I don't mean data necessarily just the quantitative data, which is important, and is important to establish systems so we can do that more regularly and frequently and longitudinally, as well as other ways that we're already doing, but also qualitatively too. So I just want to thank you for navigating the complexities of government bureaucracy to put it in the form, but also knowing what you're doing and working together with Sean and others and Jesus and Jennifer and everybody at the site level as well to have the right thoughts and to be able to express it verbally, even though the forms are a little bit cumbersome. So that's not unnoticed. Thank you so much.
It's funny, I was reflecting on that in terms of the 11 years I've been on the board, and LCAP came in that period of time. And originally, it was the local control funding formula. It was supposed to be much easier for local boards to figure out what they're doing, and then you have all these state requirements, and you're right, a lot of bureaucratic tape. They seem to not be able to make that simple, I just wanted to say thank you, Leticia, as well, and all of your team for your hard work, but also I love the local data that is incorporated here, and it seems like we've had to maybe rely on it a little bit more because we haven't had the CASP. So I'm sure that there's been lessons learned, so just encourage you to follow through on that, because I've often felt that the CASP data, especially the year to year, is so arbitrary and random and depends on how that kid felt that morning compared to another kid and how they felt that previous morning a year ago. I know that we need it and we have to do it, but I do think that local data, especially the cohort data, from the beginning of the year to the middle to the end, and if you can do more assessments in between, can be really helpful. I know it can be burdensome for teachers, so finding that right balance and how to document it in a way, but also have it be really useful to them and helpful. So I just encourage you to continue down that path as you move forward on that. So thank you so much. Thank you. Any other comments for Leticia? Okay, discussion's over. Still on.
I think Dr. Bhatia will be presenting on professional development also.
Yes, do you want to just stay up? Okay. 5B, approval of the 2022-23 Site and District Professional Development Plan, and this is an action item.
I just recommend this is 7:30. May we take a 10-minute break before we continue? Because I think we have this and then have the finance, so this might be a good point to take a 10-minute intermission.
Sure, okay. How do we do that, Rosie?
Do we need to, I don't know if we need to
Do we
vote.
need anything formal?
No, you do not need to vote.
Okay.
That's not an official action of the board. It is common under Robert's Rules of Order to, take a break, and that's fine. So you'll recess for 10 minutes. It's 7:29. We'll see you back at 7:39.
Great, thank you.
Go ahead, Leticia, for approval of the 2022-23 Site and District Professional Development Plan.
Here we are. Good evening again, everyone. So here, as part of our local control accountability plan and also single plan for student achievement goals. The one thread that is embedded throughout, as you saw earlier in LCAP, the thread that's embedded throughout our actions and services is the thread of equity. And so we're making sure that all the professional development and supports that we're providing our staff are rooted in equity. We're looking forward, and thank you, Dr. McFetridge, for your leadership on the equity audit. We're looking forward to taking a look the specific details of that audit to continue to support our professional development plan. And wanted to let you know that as part of our CUSD CUTA contract, we do have a professional development article that allows the district to support 6 early release days, previously known as Super Tuesdays. Now they are shifting to Super Fridays. And so in this, this is kind of like, you're going to see the elementary and the secondary overview, but we have 3 district-wide PDs where we, again, take a look at professional development district-wide, and we meet with our elementary educators across all school sites. The other 3 district-wide professional development opportunities are site-based, and the site-based professional development topics must be supported and approved by the site leadership teams. And so all site leadership has reviewed the plan and has approved this. So I definitely want to thank our site principals in supporting the PD for next year. Keeping in mind that we are, particularly in an elementary, when we are adopting now, when we have adopted now officially our ELA adoption benchmark Adelante, we want to make sure that we continue to focus on those topics, but through the content, because again, knowledge equals growth, and knowledge equals equity and supports for our students. And so we do feel that making sure that we embed not only training around our new curriculum, particularly ELA, ELD, and elementary, but speaking of differentiation, making sure that we are looking at that training and that curriculum through that lens of equity in what we are doing for all of our students, the majority of our students, but those students that have not reached proficiency, as our data mentions, are students that may not be as engaged because they might have some social emotional situations occurring. How do we engage those students in the curriculum? And then how do we engage our students who have already met proficiency? How do we challenge our students? So the curriculum that we did adopt does have recommendations on that differentiation of instruction. We also have, we want to start next year by making sure that we continue that homeschool connection and communicate with our families the different topics and as the scope and sequence of learning for our ELA, ELD. And we also mentioned multi-tiered systems of support. I know that we are looking at Adora Dome and her work around the social emotional supports, access, and equity. Another important piece in elementary is also looking at the grading practices and making sure that we're looking at ensuring that we're allowing and giving opportunities for students to demonstrate their success, not necessarily by are they completing their homework or not, but are they able to demonstrate content knowledge. We do have an elementary task force, and they're very interested, particularly now that we adopted ELA, ELD, is taking another look at the report cards. They are standards-based, but they're not very parent-friendly, or at least we've heard from some of our parents and some of our staff. And so some of this work will be embedded throughout the plan. And I'm not going to go into detail, but you can see that the main 2 topics are MTSS, access, and equity, but through the lens of instruction, and making sure we're differentiating and supporting all of our students, no matter where they are on their journey of learning and being proficient or advanced. Then the next plan, Rosie, is our secondary, I believe. Okay, and we, okay, so similar to elementary, again, we're grounding ourselves around best practices and looking at that subgroup data to ensure all of our students are learning. I know the concurrent enrollment and the work that Dr. McFetrich has led, we want to ensure that we support all our learners, because not all learners maybe success looks different for all of our students. And having that, giving students, particularly in secondary, the choice of the pathway, whether it's through the Pilarcitos or independent study or concurrent enrollment, that's some of the work that the secondary staff will continue to work on, because we did learn some good things after COVID, right? The independent study does work for some of our students, and concurrent enrollment, some of our students are actually more successful in different pathways and not the standard pathway of high school. And ethnic studies is also going to be a focal area for us next year. We are building some curriculum this summer with some of our secondary staff. And again, MTSS will continue as a district to target multi-tiered systems of support, particularly positive behavior intervention systems, where we're giving students the tools on how to be successful in class and demonstrate positive behavior. And I believe that is it. So it's similar to elementary. Major difference, like I said, is the support around the articulation with concurrent enrollment and articulation with the local colleges. And you have any questions?
Real quick before questions, this is an action item. Can I have a motion to approve? And a second?
I'll second.
And then discussion.
Social emotional learning.
Okay.
I'll just say thank you, Leticia, for bringing this to us. Very well thought out, and I appreciate the focus on equity in MTSS. And I think that what you're presenting here does really align to that, which is really great. And I appreciate the focus in that vein around things like grading and instructional access, because at the end of the day, if kids can't access challenging content and have the support to be successful in that and be assessed in a way that really truly reflects their skills and their understanding and their knowledge, rather than some artificial things that can sometimes happen through traditional grading methods, for example, we're doing our students a disservice and just placing barriers and removing those blocks from underneath them instead of adding them. So I appreciate you and our school leaders other school leaders working together to do that. And just a small comment on the Cunha piece around PBIS and setting expectations and messaging to students is just a caution to take care to not approach PBS with our students kind of from a top-down expectation setting purely, because I think that with our tweens and teens sometimes isn't received as well as we as grown-ups think it will be, and to really engage them in the process and to think about classroom-based PBIS solutions that can really support kids kind of from the bottom up and just kind of lift them up rather than telling them this is what you need to do. Like they know, I mean, who are we kidding, right? Like they mostly know, but it's just a matter of creating the learning environment where we can help them get there. So it's almost like maybe we flip that concept a little bit and really how do we support our students to get to our expectations rather than just telling them come on, don't throw food. I think they know that. But it's how do we support them to get them to have the productive behaviors for themselves and for their classmates to learn and grow and flourish. So that would be my one comment on the specific, but otherwise it looks really good in terms of your vision and kind of your goals around equity and PSS and pieces that you put in place to get there.
Thank you. And there was definitely a team, because I know the principals worked on creating the site-based trainings. And again, we do have a fabulous team, and we're looking forward to next year and continuing our learning and growth.
So just real quick on the, go ahead. I know that you do surveys of teachers after some of the different things. So I think maybe just explain a little bit how you do that and kind of what kind of feedback you've gotten in the past and how that's helped form what you're doing. And I'm just kind of curious, is that feedback only on the district PD programs, or is that also at the site level? Is feedback gotten from the teachers on what works and what doesn't and what's helped them and what's not?
So at the district, we do always basically ask the similar, like, 3 questions. What worked well during this PD? What can be improved? And is there any new knowledge or additional information you can give us to improve? And so this year, definitely the feedback helped us modify professional development to support students. The first PD that we had, because again, the district runs 3 PDs and then 3 site-based, we did present a lot on data, probably like an hour and a half to 2 hours on data, and mainly more the standardized data, the summative data. And we did receive feedback a little bit on formative and the importance of how that can feed to formative, but we heard from our staff that they're very well aware of where the gaps are, and our staff did ask if we can be more focused on strategies that they can easily implement in the classroom. And so we did modify our professional development and actually working with San Mateo County Office of Education. They provided some very amazing research on, it actually was through Stanford, on best strategies, classroom strategies that can support academic learning and can support teachers in assessing, is a child learning that daily standard or that daily goal for the day. And our third PD, we went even deeper, and we were able to group teachers into subject level and grade level areas, and they did select a couple of strategies that they would implement starting the end of the spring and then beginning next year. And we did ask our principals to follow up with our teachers and support them in collaborating and implementing that particular strategy that they chose. So we did share, it must have been over 50 different strategies that support academic learning, and informed, strategies that can help our teachers understand and quickly assess if the students were able to obtain that content standard. And so we do that at a district level. At the site level, we do have, depending on the training, right? If it's a collaboration, because I know that middle school and high school, the last Super Friday now, they do articulation. So we do ask, they just ask a simple, was this supportive of you to have collaboration across middle and high school? And our staff said definitely. That's why it came back this year. So it depends on the type of training, but yes, we do ask our principals to survey our staff to ensure that the time spent in professional development is worth everybody's time, and our teachers are taking at least one nugget. If a teacher can take one nugget from a training and implement it the next day, that's a measure of success for us.
Thank you, and thank you for that example of how you actually incorporated it in that same year for them to actually get what they needed out of it. So I really appreciate that, Leticia. Any other comments or discussion? No? Okay. So I think we're ready to vote. Thank you, Leticia.
Thank you.
All in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. 4-1, and President Alexander is absent.
Okay, it takes us to item 5D, proposed CUSD budget for the fiscal year 2022-2023.
And Interim Chief Business Officer Jennifer Marsh will be presenting on this, and thank you very much.
And again, a reminder to the board, this is for discussion only tonight, and we'll be approving it at the end of June. Thank you, Jennifer. Welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for the warm welcome, Lizette. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. I've been working in the business department for 16 years at Cabrillo, so kind of behind the scenes. So first opportunity doing this, and I appreciate it. Thank you very much. So tonight, I am presenting the 22-23 budget. And so this is the budget development timeline. And currently in June, we're working in 2 fiscal years, the 21-22 estimated actuals and the 22-23 adopted budget and LCAP. And the next step after that in budget development will be closing the books for 21-22 and presenting unaudited actuals in September. And this is our 22-23 budget summary and multi-year projections, and it includes an assumption of a 4% growth in property taxes. After meeting the 3% reserve balance, the district's unassigned balance is positive for the current budget and following fiscal years. So you can see more details in our packet about that. You can go there. Okay, so this is the summary of funding using the LCFF calculator. And again, it's the assumption of 4% growth in property taxes, and the district will remain in basic aid status for all 4 years there. And I'm just going to kind of keep on going here. It's just short and sweet, but so this is regarding the reserves and the reserve cap. There are some new requirements regarding the reserve cap, but since we are basic aid, we are exempt from that, and so we do not have to maintain the reserve above 10%. And so there are several items not included in our proposed budget. The governor's budget is not approved yet, so some of this is still pending regarding that. Main one is one-time discretionary funding, which is approximately $3.8 million, and that's to be determined with the final state budget. There's also a special education revenue increase that will be based on county estimates at first interim. The deferred maintenance of $100,000, it's actually looking like that likely won't happen based on most recent state budget communication. There are some additional likely expenditures that are not included, such as vacation accrual liability, continued extra mental health and after-school supports, updating our bus fleet, and additional costs for providing universal school meals.
I just want to say, I think it's very important, and Jennifer and I have talked about this too, when you see that one-time discretionary funding of $3.8 million and you hear from her what that money could be used for, it is up to the legislature to determine and to do the arm wrestling they do with the governor over the next 20 days to figure out what that money actually can be spent for, but it is one-time funding. And I will also say that that $3.8 million estimated, it's about $1,500 per student, 2,700 students. I think that's where we get that number. It's important to remember that that actually might be money that is important for us if our 4% projection, which we increased from the 2% projection, winds up being faulty. I was just looking at the calculator today of assessed taxes, and it's 6.25, but we also did get an indicator recently that it could be as low as 1.2. So this is where California funding and local tax funding is always, and we use this metaphor all the time, a roller coaster. You have to wait for it. So if you looked at the budget on the 4% projection, we're in the black for the next 3 years. But if it's below 4%, then we would not be in the black after 3 years. And so that money, the one-time discretionary funding, would be important for us to plug holes for certain things that we've decided are important, like this budget liability for vacation accrual, which is bad debt. It just increases. With every salary increase, that amount of money increases. So we are happy that CSEA negotiated with us on that. Of course, there's special education contributions that the general fund has to make. That is a year-to-year calculation depending on students, services, non-public schools, et cetera, et cetera. and then the investments we make in social, emotional learning, mental health, and wellness. So I'm just trying to temper us, and this, this is typical of me, typical of a superintendent, typical of a chief business officer, is for us to say we are optimistic and cautious that 3.8 million might save us in case we are actually wound up being in deficit spending and in the hole in the third out year.
So speaking of the discretionary block grant, so it does equate to approximately $1,500 per ADA. It is distributed on a per ADA basis using the 21-22 second principal apportionment, the P2 reported ADA, which for Cabrillo was 2,592.21, which equates to slightly more than $3.8 million. The intent of this one-time funding is to prioritize the use for maintaining staffing levels, student learning, operational costs, and supporting mental health and wellness of students and staff. So there's a lot of talk about that, and it's pretty exciting. Our budget report has all the detailed report, including in our packet, for lots of interesting stuff to look at. We are certifying as positive, because we were able to meet our financial obligations for the current and 2 fiscal years following. So we are hoping to get that approved. And really, that is about the end of my presentation, unless there's more.
Well, I just want to say, too, that I spoke to Jesus Contreras this morning, and of course, Jennifer is Jesus's right-hand woman. Sorry to say it this way, but as a colleague, Jennifer, over all these years, has been very instrumental to budget development. So it is fitting that she is in the position as interim CBO and presenting tonight. We thank you, Jennifer, for the work you do. I know Jesus is very appreciative during his time off for personal time, for medical reasons, to be out, that you are there at the helm. And thank you so much for all the work you do for us, Jennifer.
Thank you. Sorry, I'm a little nervous. It's not you, it's me. Trust me.
You did fine. You did just fine, and that was efficient and a good use of time. And I'm sure the board will ask questions, and here we go.
Yeah, any questions?
Just a comment, I think, Sean, first of all, I just want to say thank you, Jennifer, for being here. Thank you for all that you're doing in Jesus's leave of absence right now. We all very much miss him and are very much grateful that you've stepped in to fill those big shoes while he's out. And I know it's obviously been a team effort to do that too. So thank you first for being here and doing that. And also, I think both of you spoke a little bit in terms of kind of the state process for determining budgets and determining what the LCFF funding will be. So much still up in the air, with the governor having made his proposal, the legislature now having made their counter proposal, and the proof will be in the pudding when they come to agreement ultimately. So to Sean's point, I think that's really important to know. Nothing's set until it's set, and then it still really isn't set because it could change. And I appreciate that you mentioned about the community funded or basic aid districts, how we're subject to different reserve criteria and limitations, and the rationale, my understanding being mainly because the cash flow is so volatile when you're basic aid funded, because of when the money comes in, it's more closely linked to property tax payments as being kind of the main factor. But also, I think because much of our funding does come directly from property taxes, if those assumptions are off, to Sean's point of, we think currently it's 4% based on what we're hearing, from our sources at the county. If it goes up to 6 or if it goes down to 1.2, we've got to be able to ride those waves too. So does that kind of accurately or fairly explain the rationale for why basic aid districts have that little bit of leeway?
Absolutely.
For reserves? Yeah. It's like kind of having a cushion because, it's like work. I think I always think about it as like a server in a restaurant working on tips. You don't know what you're going to get, as opposed to when you have like a salary that's like guaranteed every month that you're going to get. It's like you kind of have to have a little cushion. So impact classroom numbers could also impact our budget as well in terms of staffing needs. Is that
Well,
correct?
there is also a fight in the state about whether or not basic aid fund districts will receive increased apportionment for TK. And so it is an argument from California School Boards Association, other people, that basic aid funds, basic aid districts are actually not being funded in the same way as LCFF districts. And so TK becomes an extra expense. However, there is sort of this, how do I say it, Byzantine kind of funding stream that Leticia could talk about better than I can, about startup funds for TK, and so we bank on that. But we are watching very carefully the advocacy in the state for basic aid districts to the point of the reserve. I mean, most basic aid districts, and the reason why this board, with a split vote, but nonetheless, this board staff recommended a larger reserve than we are carrying in the third or second out year, was because the volatility. It's why we have to take the TRAN, which is our loan that we take each year as a basic aid district, because we actually have a cash shortfall to make payroll. And if Mary Beth Alexander were here, I know that she's commented on it before. I won't speculate if she were here, she would bring it up. But it is often something that she has brought up to me in the past, which is, wow, wouldn't it be great if we didn't have to have that reserve, because then we, or if we had that reserve, because then maybe we wouldn't have to take a loan. So yes, basic aid, we're a poor basic aid district. We are not a rich basic aid district like the districts over the hill. I met with a teacher today to discuss this. They understand it. Our tax base is lower than over the hill for many basic aid districts. And it is volatile. It is entirely possible that we could flip depending on what our percentage of funding is and the percentage of taxes. It is predicted. I hate to be an Eeyore about it. Sorry for my Winnie the Pooh metaphor, but I hate to be somebody who is pessimistic about it. But when you look also at what the Legislative Analyst Office is saying about, hey, we have unfounded exuberance in this area. We're getting a bunch of money now, schools are, but next year you can expect potentially recession. If you read the news, they're talking about inflation, stagflation, going back to an economic time of the 70s. I did read analysis that says that schools will be able to survive this because of the extra funding that we've received, but we are always keeping an eye on it. In this district, one thing that is a factor is declining enrollment, which keeps us cemented in basic aid, and that's a good thing. But with the increase of TK over the next few years, and as all 4-year-olds then become in transitional kindergarten eligible over time, over the next like 3 to 5 years, I think, you can see that we will be serving more students. We have to build more classrooms. We have to hire more staff, especially when it's going to be a 10-to-1 ratio teacher to student. So a lot of volatility. Able to pass raises to employees the last 3 years, 3%, and this last raise, which is $5,000 per employee, tantamount to 5.72%, I think. So we have been able to come up with more than 11% of raises in the last 3 years, but we will really have to watch that going forward. And I just want to manage expectations. We don't know what we know until we know it, and taxes, we're always waiting on those taxes. And so the P2, I think, is what we're waiting on.
And the annual.
In the annual. And so Jennifer will be reporting on that next time, and then again in August. Board wants more information about TK funding. Leticia certainly knows that backwards and forwards, as she's advocating for lower class sizes. You saw in the last presentation of 10-to-1. It could be 12-to-1 this year. We're advocating for 10-to-1, plus additional staff to support. Leticia, I'd be happy for you to speak to that.
Yeah, maybe just a short,
Just
like
very
two to
short,
three
very
sentences.
short. We have three pots, potentially 4. Every district, so every district gets a startup pot. For our district, it's about $130,000. And so to absorb some of the staffing, professional development, curriculum cost. We also are partnering with San Mateo County Office of Ed to support us with TK and early childhood ed credits, because TK teachers need the early childhood ed credential. So we'll know, I think they applied last week, we'll know over the summer if we, if the county was able to get this multi-million-dollar grant. We also are partnering with CFW, I believe, who's helping us with facilities and a potential $3 million facilities grant. We're going to be submitting that grant, but we won't know until over the summer months. But again, like Sean said, with decreasing enrollment in TK, like, we feel like it's hopefully will even out. But those are some of the funding sources that we know as of now.
I just want to, again, manage expectations about that last number you heard about a grant for facilities. Coldwell Flowers Winters, Caldwell Flores Winters. One of the checklists is that you have to have a maximum developer fee. We do not have a maximum developer fee. We have not chosen to bring that as a recommendation to the board because you do not have additional housing being built here. So you have to have a justification study to show that you have additional housing. That housing is negligible. So it is entirely likely that we are not going to have that facilities money for us, for our facilities for TK. That said, the developer fees that we do have developed a reserve, if you will, an account. So it could be brought to bear for these purposes. We can repurpose portables. We are currently doing that, have done that, as you know, repurposed modulars over at Hatch Elementary, where one TK set of classrooms is, and then over at El Granada. The TK is a piece of volatility for us, especially as a basic aid district.
Thanks. I do have a question, and again, it may not be an answer for tonight, but when we see one-time funding, and I hear what you're saying, Sean, in terms of, yeah, if our taxes are lower, we're going to end up using it for salary. I get that. But in the event taxes are stable, and you can't take one-time funding and expect it to be sustainable on a salary schedule. Do we have recommendations for best value and use of that funding? Are there like one-time projects like queued up, like, gosh, if we had it, we'd want to spend it on this? And I'm just wondering if maybe that's not a productive thing to do. So then when we have these, if funding is going to be volatile, if we have those opportunities, we don't just spend it on an afternoon program and then it's gone. Maybe there's something that's either programmatical materials or instruments or something that's, I don't know, science kits, anything that we have some longer term vision of that would be useful for education purposes.
I'm going to answer that by saying we still, and Jennifer and I were talking about this morning, we still need to see what the strings attached are for this funding. I was at Capital Advisors 2 weeks ago at the county office listening to this, and everybody's exuberant about this money. Hey, you're going to get $1,500 per student, but we know that it's tied to one time. If it's tied to one time, best practice, as you said, Kim, is not to use one time for ongoing costs because it's unsustainable. So it would not be used for salary. However, if we have a shortfall, it could be used to bridge. I will also say that when we talked about all this accrued vacation liability to the tune of $450,000, that's going to take over 10% over the course of 3 years. And I will also say that the horizon on this funding, if it does materialize, is a 3 to 5 year window they're predicting. So we will be able to use that money over 3 to 5 years. I would gather that we will present on this in the fall with more information from the legislature, what the strings attached are, how we could spend it, and our recommendations at that time to spend it. And you know that our recommendations probably will be based conservatively on making ends meet. And then, as you said, whether or not it is for particular services, training, things that are one-time, or, as you said, instrument replenishment. It's always like you could use it for one-time funds. I think that would be up to staff, and I don't get in the weeds on this. I would be up to our chief business officer, interim chief business officer, assistant superintendent curriculum instruction to work with different teams, including staff, teachers, CSEA members, CUTA members, and family members to determine what recommendations will be for that money, knowing that it is limited, it is one time, and we may have to use it to shore up a budget since we just basically played out a healthy reserve over the next 3 years in our last salary negotiations. Rightfully so, because our employees desperately need to be paid a competitive wage as best we can. I hope that answered it.
Any more questions or comments? I just had a real quick question about the assumption, the 4%. Is that just for this year, or is that for all of the years? And then
Ongoing.
multi-year? All the years, okay. Thank you so much for your presentation. You didn't seem nervous at all.
Thank you.
You did a great job.
Yes, thank you, and don't be nervous, because you're the expert, remember.
But Jennifer, don't go, because the next two
Yeah, the
items.
next two are yours as well.
Well, I don't think there'll be, now, this was not an actionable item, and there was a public hearing, and it will come back next time, right? The budget for final approval?
Yeah, we had no action.
But the other pieces are the adoption of the fiscal year-end resolution appropriating ending balance to a reserve. I could say it in layman's terms, but I know you can do this better than I can. This is a resolution we do every year, isn't it, Ms. Marsh?
It is, yes. I'm not really prepared to do that right now.
Let me explain it real quick. This is basically just taking whatever ending balance we have and you appropriate it to a reserve. So this is basically something that every district does, which means you take the ending balance subject to the GAN limitation, which is this arcane 1978 law, and it basically says the money that we have at the end, we sweep it so that we can use it for other expenses. And so we would recommend approval because it is something we do every year with you.
Okay, so on item 5E is an action item. Can I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
A second?
I'll second.
And Rosie, it's a resolution, right?
It's a resolution. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Sophia. And we need to do a roll call. Do we have
Oh, wait,
any comments?
Yeah, any comments or questions?
No? Okay, let's move to roll call. Mary Beth is absent. Freya?
Aye.
Sophia? Kimberly?
Aye.
Lisette? Passes 4-1. Thank you.
And
Okay. And then item 5.4 is adoption of fiscal year-end resolution number 15-2022, approving budgetary increases and transfers at year-end.
And again, this is a pro forma, regular, thing that we do at the end of every year. Basically, you get a resolution. It allows the business office to perform accounting necessary to close the previous fiscal year books and to make increases and transfers at year-end, basically to keep us, our ledgers accounted for and in the black. Did I get that right, Ms. Marsh?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah, she can do the budget. I can just sort of like say, oh yeah, this is to keeping the wolves at the door. This is how we take the money and move it so that we, if there are overages or underages, I don't think that's a word, but if there are overages or deficits, that's how we move this money around. But we do need a resolution, and just for the board and the public, that resolution is included, but I won't read it.
So do I have a motion to approve the resolution? So moved. And a second?
Second.
Thank you, Lisette. Thank you, Kim.
Roll call?
No comments?
Oh,
Okay.
questions, guys?
President Alexander is absent. Freya?
Aye.
Sophia?
Aye.
Kimberly?
Aye.
Lisette? Passes 4-1.
Okay, it takes us to item, thank you.
Jennifer, thank you for being my lifeline on this. And I cannot tell the public and the board enough how much I've appreciated the calm, steady hand of Jennifer Marsh all the years, the 3 years I've been here. She just is a voice of reason and really very stabilizing force for me when I'm worried. So thank you, Jennifer, very much. And now Mr. Lin, as our interim Director of Technology, will present a technology update. And I've asked Mr. Lin to not read the slides because this is definitely an area where I look at some of this and I think, ooh, I'm a layman. You've got to explain what this means, Stig, because this involves a lot of technology speak that I don't quite understand. So thank you, Stig, for doing this for us.
No problem. Thank you. Next. Do I do the slide or do you? Oh, thank you. So this is our wonderful technology team that I wouldn't be able to do our work without. We have the student data system coordinator, Tatiana Marbel, and Yanis Ourantis. Sorry, Yanis, if I said your last name wrong. We have Nicholas Carey, and we have George Bennicott, who's a district computer technician. We have Eric Antonius, a system support specialist. And this year we had a student who now graduated and is going to college and do data technology. Then we have Sam Martin, who has been with us for 2 years as a volunteer. Yeah, big shout out to Sam. He is been a system and network engineer for HP for 40 years. And he helps our guys, and he also helps us to look into things in our system that we don't have the time to do. So he is holding classes for our technicians as well. So this is the work we did last year. We replaced 500 outdated Chromebooks because the apps didn't work anymore with them. We implemented Go Guardian in all grades. We only had it in middle school and high school first, but it's a valuable tool, especially when we are one-to-one Chromebooks in each classroom. We worked also to adjust all wireless network in the district, because sometimes when classes are close to each other, I have 30 kids, and we get overflow of that equipment. It slows down the network, and so we have worked with that. We resolved more than 2,500 help desk tickets. We also have now teacher technology specialists at each site. That's a teacher that I meet with 1-2 times a month to go through stuff in the classroom, that new technology, for example. It's also for getting their input, what's work in the classroom or not. We also implemented a new secure connection for our financial system, and a lot more. So this year we have a few projects already going. Prepare Summer School, which started today. A lot of work to get that going. We're going to replace sound, bell, and clock system at Half Moon Bay High School. We're going from analog system to digital system. We also implementing a new electronic document system in the district. We're actually getting into 21st century. And that is following a workflow, so going to be smoother between the departments. We have applied for E-rate we looking in for the next year's network upgrades. Working on technology for the new bond project, the Fellaview, and for El Granada. We're going to work with securing each office with backup power for phones and computers, wireless, specifically when we have these blackouts and things, so the offices can be safe and work properly. Next slide, thank you. So E-rate is something that we in the district applying for each year. It's a federal funding, state funding. There we get a certain percentage of our funding for our network internet connection. We get, I think, 70% of our cost for our internet and the connection between the sites. This year, we applied and got $148,000 in funding to fund our internet. We're also going to upgrade all the speed between each school site and out to the internet. It's going to go from 3 gigabit to 10 gigabit. Next slide. Here is, I'm not going to go into specific, like Dr. McPacker said. We have set up some new servers who do update in our network to our laptops, computers, and other stuff. We're working on securing our network more and more. We implementing logging system with notification system. We have backup batteries have been replaced for the server locations. We have set up secondary servers for our servers who is those who control the system. That gives us also more time that we can work on other servers when school are in session.
If I can just break in here, I just want to remind everyone that the board, we presented on this in previous years where the grand jury talked about, is it safe? Because school security, technology security, internet security is a big thing. In the county, there was a district that sort of was held ransom because they had access to their student information system, their data. This is an issue, and so I've really appreciated Stig talking me through all the different things we had to do this year in his time, because I had to report back to the grand jury, did you do these things? And Stig was really instrumental to doing that, so thank you, Stig.
Thank you. So another important part of is our student data system. It's a big thing that we have Janis and Tatiana, who is our leading in that area. They are working to different applications through Clever. Clever is something that the students use, and it's also a system that we are working now to implement so that when we get a new staff or a new student in, it's going to pull the data into our system, and we don't need extra people and time to do that. We can concentrate. That's the thing we really need to do. Another important thing to that we're working mostly to get a deeper integration with all the platforms. So we working to get the system to be more self-sufficient. Next slide. There. Thank you. So the goal is to provision a Clever as our primary identity management system. We are most of these vendors we connect with in Clever only pull data nightly, so student and staff have to wait a few days for system to be working. So that's what I'm working to get that to happen more frequently. In 21-22 school year, Cabrillo Unified School District entered a partnership with the San Mateo County Office of Education to provide access to the online analyst platform Tableau. Tableau will almost allow us to create our own data dashboard, which are specifically designed around the various district educational performance goals. And I think Dr. Bai have big use for that, for her planning.
And I will say that all the data that has been presented this year to the board on Ds, Fs, and incompletes has been a labor of love, and not that we relish it, but Dr. Bhatia, Mr. Lin, Yanis, Tatiana, and the principals at the secondary schools and assistant principals at the secondary schools, Cunha Intermediate and Half Moon Bay High School in particular, it has been quite challenging. This is an exciting way for us to develop our, what Jesus calls the data machine, what I would call a performance management system. So thank you for your work on that.
Then this year we actually have been able to do IT staff training thanks to Sam, who has been instrumental to set up the classes for our staff get up to date with our knowledge. The problem through my years in the school district, in the IT department, has always been that never time to do education. And it's so important because when you're out there in the private sector, you put 40% of your time towards education. So I'm glad we get that started this year, and we continue to plan classes over the summer for our staff. That's all, I think, in my presentation. Any questions?
Any questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment, thank you, Stig, for bringing all this to us. So much good work and so much behind the scenes where, I think maybe Lizette said something or Sean said something earlier about, like, it's one of those areas where if it works, people don't notice it.
Exactly.
If it doesn't work, everyone notices it and it's like, wow. So for me, it's like two key words that you kept repeating over and over, which achieve that goal, are backups and systems. So like how you build redundancy, through batteries or through whatever, so that if one thing goes down, everything's not lost, right? You have redundancy. And through having systems, so people don't need to sit there through an Excel file, like manually, we're past those days. We're getting into the 21st century, as you say. So I think that's really great and really important. And I had one technology I wanted to ask you about, because I know there are more satellite internet technologies available now through Starlink and others. I don't know if that's something that's been on the horizon for anything that we need right now to make sure we have like a alternative internet connection.
So
I mainly think about it for safety purposes.
yeah, we implemented here at Cunha, we have a backup system that we implemented last year. I would love to implement it on other sites, but it's a very high cost, and you need to weigh the cost against the benefits.
Yeah, that's what I was curious about, the need. And I know, like, our setup at Fair and Longview has limited cell coverage up there, and I know
That's correct.
could be challenging up there, but the technologies are advancing pretty quickly in terms of satellite technologies, which is great. So we'll see. Again, like you said, it depends the need versus the cost. It's yours kind of comparing those two. So thank you.
Thank you.
I was just going to, thank you very much. And I don't know whether to address to you, Stig, or to Sean. What is our technology budget for the district?
I don't have that information offhand. I mean, that would take investigation. We'd have to look at all the expenses. I mean, it is certainly the IT team. It is the training that we do on all kinds of platforms. I mean, this touches
And
everything.
there's recurring costs on equipment and investments. I'm just thinking, again, that being curious and reminding the public to be curious, that this is one of those areas that there's been kind of a growth over time because the need has grown. So just that awareness at some time, we might want to understand what the ratio is of that investment for technology against the cost of our infrastructure.
Well, I mean, Stig, you certainly could talk about replacement costs for tablets, computers, et cetera, et cetera.
So one important thing that had been lost back in time when we had really bad budget and things was the first thing that we cut down on is technology. We can use it a couple of years more. We increased that year, we're going to invest in technology, going to be much higher. So it's a good way to keep it balanced, to keep buying new equipment each year, but fewer, and you would need to keep it 5 years, and then we replace everything. So we're trying to replace everything. I do not know the cost totally. I know that the cost went up under COVID, and that's understandable. We were lucky last year. We got the $360,000 grant that the former director applied for new Chromebooks. So that's going to be saving for us this year and 2 years forward.
Plus, that E-rate funding is something that Stig this year applied for. And then, so it's always about determining, okay, what machines are coming offline and what need to be ordered. So this is a moving target, but it also depends greatly on the E-rate.
So I'm also going to start working on a technology plan of 3 years. That was a requirement from the state back in time. So when Bailey was in the district as director, she had to do that every 3 years. But in 2016 or 17, I think it was, the state dropped that thing. And of course, that's the thing that the district have gone away from. So that is, but I think it's still important that we do a technology plan so we know our budget for going forward, what we're going to need to buy.
I think another important point is the technology has become ubiquitous for instruction. I think sometimes maybe too ubiquitous, if that's maybe that's a redundancy. I'm over accentuating that. Sometimes I go into, sometimes I'll go into a classroom and think, oh, we're so reliant on machines for instruction. It's a great thing. It's a great tool. But we have wound up spending a lot more money, particularly because of COVID, on technology and on devices for students. When I entered the district, I think the idea was, oh my God, we have one-to-one for high school students. Now we basically have one-to-one for every student in some way, shape, or form, whether it's even the youngest learners with tablets. So this is something that we will have to keep an eye on. And the other thing I would charge us with is that what I've asked Stig to do and what Jesus and I had discussed with Stig is we need to develop a standard for every classroom. So if you have a projector, like you see up in the ceiling mount, is it better to have a smart TV or a projector? Well, there are costs and benefits. The projector is much more expensive because of the infrastructure costs to wire it, to install it, and to pay for that little bulb and the power. And the smart TV actually is less expensive, but they have different, you have to weigh that. So one thing that Stig will be working on in his new job as Director of Technology in the 22-23 school year is developing a standard so that we know that what is expected for every classroom in every school, and then a plan to, over time, incrementally get to that standard.
I just mentioned that too. I just updated our technology. When we do construction, it's a 40-page document that we have there. It's updated with the new regulations and what we want to have in the classroom when we do construction.
Oh, go ahead. Do you have a question? No. Okay. I thought you were pressing your little button. Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, Stig, for your presentation.
I have a last
you
one.
go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to thank you, and this is also very confusing, but it's not really interesting, but it's exciting that we're coming up to speed with the technology. I mean, and I just also want to thank you for all your support when I would go to the district and freak out because I forgot my password or the computer just shut off on me, and even to the point where I was even allowed to use your office. Thank you very, very much.
No problem.
And also, I want to, kudos to you for doing this team photo, because I am horrible with names. I'm like the worst of the worst. And I'm always whispering to someone, who was that? Who is that? What do they do? You know, I feel like, okay, if I'm a board member, like, you think I need to know, right? So just putting the faces to the people, thank you. I really thank you for that.
Thank you.
So thank you, Stig. I have one more question. I'm just curious about the house. Is the server still in the house?
The house?
The house in front of the district office. And
No.
I was told that the server was there, and that's why we couldn't get
No.
rid of the house. Is the server now not in that house anymore?
No.
So that doesn't have any more equipment in it? Does it have a phone system?
I was talking to Ronaldo Vesalisa about this. I will say Holly mourns the house because all the vegetation that was planted around it, it looked like an ivy-decked, like Ivy League kind of school out there, didn't it? It was beautiful. Now, the cats and raccoons loved it too. It was a whole ecosystem
It was
of
becoming
itself.
one with the earth.
But actually, and Stig and his predecessor were involved with having area trenched around that so that The,
So our old
Yeah.
phone system with our connection to the county was actually located inside that house. So this winter, we have actually trenched out it, moved it, and it's in the copy room in the district office now.
Curious about whether or not there was, whether that part was still in the house or not. So the
No.
house currently doesn't have any technology or things that are, okay.
No.
Well, thank you for everything you've done. I really
Thank you.
appreciate it bringing us up to speed and helping, especially over the COVID years. That
I
was
have
really
a
hard.
quick
so. Oh, go
question.
ahead.
What is that house and what's going to happen to it?
yeah,
I should
sure.
answer this. That house is, years ago, it was determined that there was questions about whether or not it was a historical building, and legend has it that at one time the city of Half Moon Bay had thought about having that as their historical center, which now is just up the street at the jail, right? The old jail. So it has been determined that it's not a historical building. It has no historical significance. It did just contain the guts of our old phone system and all kinds of old furniture and families of cats and other animals, and a lovely structure for plants to grow on at one time. But the plan for that would be, because it has no longer got a usable life, would be to determine whether or not how to empty it, and then determine if it is usable by someone else. We could either demolish it and spend tens of thousands or more, maybe $100,000, but tens of thousands certainly, to demolish it, take it apart, but it has no use to us. Or conversely, and wait for it, that's probably something we will present at a future time, we would look at plans and determine whether or not we could have someone bid on it, because there are probably people who would like to take it. I'm told that this is on Nextdoor somewhere. Somebody's like, I'll take that house because there's a lot of good lumber in there. And they could actually take that apart, cut it up, trailer it off, and then build their own little tiny house on their property. And it could be a revenue, maybe a nominal revenue, as opposed to a cost to the district. Or I could build a board member office in there, I suppose.
Okay, so lots of plans. Thank you, Stig. Okay, so item 6, future events. June 20th is Juneteenth holiday. All sites are closed. And June 23rd is our next regular board meeting. Location to be determined at 6 p.m. We are ready to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second it.
Thank you, Sophia. Thank you, Lisette. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 4-1. And President Alexander absent.
Thank you.